On this episode from Lightbox Expo 2020, I, Adrian, host a panel of the brightest designers and illustrators for a discussion/art jam on creature creation for the entertainment industry. The panelists include Acedera, Christian Alzmann, Natalie Hall, Peter Hahn, Brynn Metheney, Karla Ortiz, Roberto Ribeiro Padula, and Terryl Whitlatch. It's a lively discussion with laughs and knowledge being dropped while the panelists collaborate at the same time on a final spectacular piece that must be seen to be believed. A huge thanks to Bobby Chiu, Lightbox Expo, and Wacom for allowing us to host the panel. And don't forget to subscribe to SiDEBAR Forever at sidebarforever.com and online wherever you get your podcast.
All right, I'd like to introduce you to your host, Adrian Johnson. Adrian, go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, as she mentioned, I am Adrian Johnson. I will be your moderator for this creature creation panel. We have our esteemed panelists here already working and jamming on their pieces. You know, we're going to have a bunch of fun here, so we're glad that you joined. I'm also a co-host online for a podcast called SiDEBAR Forever. You can find this on sidebarforever.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts. But without further delay, let me introduce you to the panelists. First, we have Acedera. Hey, what's going on, Kay?
What's up, guys?
Next, we have Christian Alzmann. What's going on? All right. Next down the line, we have Natalie Hall.
Hey.
What's going on?
Good, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. We have Peter Hahn.
Hey there, welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Pete?
Good.
We got Brynn Metheney.
Hi.
Hey, what's going on, Brynn? All right. Got Karla Ortiz.
Oh shit, what up?
All right. Then we got Roberto Ribeiro. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Roberto Ribeiro Padula.
Yeah, got
Oh,
it.
cool, excellent. All right, what's up, man?
What's up?
And last, but certainly not least, we have Terryl Whitlatch. Hey, Terryl, how you doing? All right, so now that you guys know who everyone is, we'll go ahead and go on over to switch on over to the jamming session.
So the story is that General Akbar is gonna be like, "It's a trap! Get out of Twitter!"
I'm my cereal.
I see that.
I get that everybody's like, "Creatures!" And I'm just like, "Still faces!"
Still waking up.
Hey, now I did have a question to kind of start things off. And also, in terms of questions, within probably the last 20-25 minutes of the panel, we'll be accepting questions from the audience from you guys. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it, look at the bottom of your screen, the audience, look at the bottom of your screen, and you'll see a Q&A section. Direct all your questions in there. And like I said, within the last 20 to 25 minutes, that's where I'll be pulling questions for the panelists from. But I got a couple of questions of my own for right now. All right. The first thing I wanted to ask is, when you guys are developing creatures, for, whatever projects, film, animation, gaming, what have you, say you get a brief that comes in and they're looking for a mix between two different physiologies, like a winged lion or something like that. What goes into the thought process of merging two different physiologies to make this creature?
Who gonna take it?
Oh, I didn't get to start too heavy now. Too early in the morning for that.
I think we should let Terryl start, actually.
My bad,
I
my
was gonna
bad.
say,
He has so much experience on that.
Yeah.
I think Terryl could take over first.
I mean, emerging creatures.
yeah, just like, you know.
I think it depends upon the type of production that it's called for. For example, if it's a magical production like Harry Potter, where anything goes, well, that's one thing. But if it's more like, say, Star Trek, that sort of feeling, well, then that's different, because in Harry Potter, you can create chimeras. You can actually say create an animal that's half this or half that. I mean, like a Frankensteinian type thing. But if you want to do, say, a more serious sci-fi, then you need to actually create a creature that has its own integrity, biological integrity. So you may think of Earth life forms and then be inspired by those, but don't do exactly those. So you can create an elephant-like creature for the planet Zoid, whatever it is. But it's not an elephant, but it is, say, based upon an elephant, and maybe this particular type of elephant-like being is able to fly, and so then you have to worry about what sort of limbs, like, for example, does it have wings? How can you adapt the type of wings that we already know work on planet Earth into this sort of being? So it's creating a creature that we can relate to, because we will relate to animals here on Earth, but yet not doing exactly those particular animals. I think I get a lot of inspiration from prehistoric animals. Those are very good models for what could be, or could, because those already had been. So that's what I generally think of if I was to have that, that question posed to me.
Okay, and then I just thought of something else while you were explaining that, Terryl. Say you do have something like a winged elephant, and we've all seen Dumbo, of course. That's animation, but you have to have. But like, for instance, like if you have a winged elephant, like an actual, even though it's CGI or whatnot, but it has to look real, so to speak.
Right.
What kind of thought goes into, like, making sure that there's enough wingspan, to support the elephant, or any other features, like, would its hind legs have to be adapted for it to land properly, or certain things like that?
Well, there's things to consider. I mean, how large, first of all, what is its body weight? I mean, it's got mass, but mass doesn't necessarily include a vehicle or an animal from taking off. And how much does it weigh? Is it able to overcome the restrictions of gravity of the gravity of the world? Mm-hmm. So you would need, most animals that fly here on Earth, most vertebrate animals, and actually most insects, invertebrate animals as well, if they're terrestrial based, they leap from the ground into the air. Even birds do. Birds just don't open their wings and there they go. They actually leap first and then open their wings up. It's a nanosecond for them. And so you need to have some legs that are able to propel them into the air, for one thing. So this elephant-like creature would have to have fairly powerful hind limbs to get into the air, and then it needs to get enough clearance for it to unfold wings, whatever wings it might have. And then you need to worry about the center of mass, for example, once it's airborne, and there are actual digital platforms that help to figure it out for doing flying creatures in space on real life. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to have an audience saying, I don't know why that doesn't look right, but it does, and they'll spend the entire rest of the movie thinking about that, rather than getting lost in the movie, which is what you don't want to have happen. So the more realistic things get, the greater the problem with the uncanny valley gets, so to speak. Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. Wow. So much goes into, like, the creation of creatures that I don't think people, consider, but once they see it on screen or in whatever project and it looks right and it works, people don't think twice about it,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's sometimes a reason why practical effects are mixed in with digital effects. If you have it in a production that's entirely CG based, and you have, say, you have live action, but everything else, for the actors, and all the actors do is act in front of a green screen and everything else is digitized.
Okay.
Well, then they end up living in kind of a dreamlike reality. But if you stick in some practical effects where you have real lighting involved and mix it up there, then you can get a nice synergistic thing going on there. So, in the Star Wars productions, both past and present, there's a mix in most cases somewhere along the line. Otherwise, it's like, oh, wow, what a really great, matte painting that is, but you don't want to be thinking about that. Or why is the hind leg of that, digital animal not quite working? I don't want to be thinking about that for the entire movie, but then that's what I'm going to bring home with me. We don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely understand.
That's it. We can leave now.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for
Broke it all
coming.
together.
Pleasure.
I'm talking
I
about.
was gonna say one thing I always look at for anything before I even go physiology is what's the character.
Mm-hmm.
If it is a character, I mean, if it's like some sort of alien animal, like alien cow, maybe it's, in a realistic movie, maybe it's literally just supposed to be more of a zoological kind of thing. But I always try to think of the character first. One of the questions I always like to ask directors or my production designer, whoever, is if you could cast anybody for the character, who, present or past or whatever, who would that be? Would it be Danny DeVito from Taxi? Would it be, God, I don't know.
Danny DeVito from Taxi.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a good one.
You got the answer in the first one. Danny DeVito from Taxi.
It's always going to be Danny DeVito.
Always Danny
Taxi.
DeVito from Taxi.
Where else is there to go after that?
Nowhere.
But I always think that's important. I think, to me, that's the most important, is to let that drive everything, because it's your actor, it's your story,
Got you. Okay, cool.
Kind of lead off of that, for me, for extension is the function. So there could be the character and the personality, but I also like to think about the function of the animal or the creature. So then the research that goes behind it can support that part. So if it's like a domesticated animal, let's say it's a pet, but also some kind of crazy creature alien thing, then the kind of animals I would look at would be more domesticated types. And domestication can affect wild animals too. So.
Okay. Well, piggybacking off what Christian was mentioning, I did have a question just in terms of, like, say you do get, once again, you do get a brief in, and for certain that a particular actor is going to play a creature or a certain type of character that a creature effect is being built for. When you start designing the creature itself, do you take a likeness of that actor just so that their facial structure or even like their body structure, and kind of start to work that as a basis to, almost customize, the creature to them?
I would say, you can. I mean, if I was, like, let's say, doing something in ZBrush, and I knew if it sort of depends what's asked. Like, if it's a full-on crazy creature that, that you're really not going to see a likeness, then you might try and get some sort of gesture that actor has, you know what I mean? Maybe the way they hold their head or shoulders or hands or something. But I have in the past started with, like a ZBrush model of that person, of an actor's head or something I've gotten close to, and then thought of it as a makeup to go on top.
Ah, okay, right.
Because that's pretty much in even though I've mostly worked in CG world, that's pretty much how you would do it in practical effects, right? You would start with a casting of the actor's head, like they did with Ron Perlman in Hellboy, and then build up from there. Yeah, if that likeness, if seeing that actor is really important to the director, and a lot of times it is, you definitely want to give that to them. Okay.
Yeah, because I imagine a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with actors and directors, they want to make sure that, because that's a selling point in the movie, that people may want to see that particular actor, so you want to make sure that you're nailing that likeness or whatnot, even underneath, all these effects and everything.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I always think the most famous one was sort of Gollum before Andy Serkis, and then Gollum after Andy Serkis. When you see the two, it was, especially for the time, it was such a stark difference to actually base it on somebody's face and performance.
Yeah, totally.
I think anything they've done with Andy Serkis has been really awesome. Even the Planet of the Apes, the way they captured Caesar, even has Andy Serkis's, kind of distinct things about him, about his face. It still kind of resonates through his the character.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, everything about those movies was just amazing. Those apes were so. I mean, that last movie, the whole time I'm just sort of pinching myself, going, "This isn't real. This isn't real." Such good work.
Now let me ask Peter. Let me ask you this. You have a course that you teach on drawing from the imagination, and a lot of people would say, "Well, that's what we do anyway." When we draw, but I think what people don't realize is that you have to kind of develop and be able to call upon a quote unquote vocabulary of sorts. When you're designing creatures and different types of fantastic animals and so forth. How would one go about developing a visual vocabulary that they can, pull from to be able to draw in the moment if a director or an art director or someone needs to see what a concept looks like right now,
Drawing from the imagination, for me, it's a lot of it is stemmed from, the class I teach, which is heavily based on observation. So being in the real world and observing the things around you. Inspiration come from very specific and direct things you're looking for. Let's say we're going for animals and insects and such. We can visit the zoos and museums or go through the books and all the online visual references if possible. But when you get to see these things in person, there's so much more information you can gather from. And a lot of times I'm not only just looking for the visual, I'm also looking about the things and how they work, where they come from, what's the landscape, the environment, how that can also direct their directions of their forms as well too. Through the biology of the evolution of their landscape really much obviously alters and changes them, things like food sources and whatever the case is. So getting out there and actually just seeing animals move around, how they interact, everything from the sights to the smells, even the tactile nature of being able to actually even interact with such things if possible is a big component as to what I like to do, is to get out on the field itself. So like last year in October, I was in Africa. Earlier this year, I was in Texas doing like falconry work. I was, in Yellowstone just a couple of months ago as well too, looking at animals out there. So I'm always on the field observing, because if the director is looking for something specific, at least I'll have the data and information of more than just a visual of something to show a picture of, but tell them and explain more about, well, this is what I think and how things can also work and gel together behind just what I can just see. For instance, like what I'm pulling from right now was from a stalk-eyed fly, when I'm drawing my drawing. So it's a mixture between this crazy alien and stuff like this, but this component is stuff from that I'm observing, but also seeing within that insect and how they actually blows its eyes out like a stalk. And I'm using that component as a part of the design here. But again, I can pull from this deep well of information, not because of just what I saw, but because the intense amount of research that I do of reading, watching from documentaries, but definitely even on location,
Oh man, that's great. And it can't be underestimated how important that is, because I think for especially like younger students or neophyte artists, yeah, we've always been told, or it's been like an unspoken thing of like, somehow, using references, quote unquote, cheating, which is
Oh, definitely
ridiculous.
not. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
totally ridiculous.
Yeah. So you got to, be able to get out there and build that, like I said, a vocabulary. And,
Yeah.
the way you explained it
Huge.
makes perfect sense.
I mean, any alien creature thing you've seen in film or games, animation, or based something in this world. So if somebody said, create an alien for me that doesn't exist in our, within our world itself, we wouldn't be able to think of it. We don't know what that actually is. Everything is always based on something that we can analyze and observe within our own world. There's always some sort of connection there to some degree. So the deeper your well is of understanding, the stronger your work can feel, not original, but in terms of a new take or a fresh take on something, or a nice combination of stuff. That makes people kind of look at it and think, I'm familiar to this, I recognize it, but it's also a unique take on it too.
Got you. I was thinking about something else. Quite a few of you guys are, known mostly for drawing like humans, but, say that you got to switch gears and, start drawing like animals and creatures and stuff like that. Is it hard to make that switch, and vice versa? If you specialize in doing creature design and, animals and so forth, is it hard to switch that gear to drawing like humans if you have to integrate humans into, say, like a keyframe painting or something, where a human might be interacting, with this particular creature or whatnot?
For me, it's, it's funny because it's almost like getting typecasted as an actor, where you're just like, listen, you played this role really well, just keep going. So I don't get a lot of, calls for a creature, but I do love painting creatures. And to me, it's like humans are, are kind of made of the same stuff as, creature anatomy. We are creatures.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of like same shapes, just arranged differently. And it's just, it's really, it's for me in particular, it's more of just like a shape exploration. So whenever I'm switching over to, painting and doing more creature stuff, again, it's really just like, oh, great. Now I'm just gonna change my shapes a little bit and then have a lot of fun. I love doing creature design, but yeah, again, I get typecasted. So
Yeah, because I think a lot of times, some artists, like myself, I fancy myself an artist, and one of my unrequited loves is trying to draw a great horse, but I find trying to make that transition to, from drawing, people all the time to drawing animals in particular, like horses or whatnot, it's very difficult, even though, like you mentioned, there are similarities, like horses do have a shoulder of a sort, they have rib cage, they have a pelvis of sorts, So it's like certain landmarks that you can maybe use to kind of help you bridge that gap, so to speak.
I agree with that 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, I teach a course for schoolism in creature anatomy, and the first lesson is dealing with human anatomy and drawing the human figure and making the point that, as human beings, we're mammals, we have the same things that are common to all vertebrate animals, and that goes throughout all tetrapods. Basically, if you go up from fleshy limbed fish, that is like coelacanths on up, all the way through birds and mammals, we share all those same physiologies. We might lose a clavicle here and there, or a number of digits, but basically it's not that big a jump. And to answer your question, I mix in human beings and animals as needed, because you often in productions you have both. You have, Little Red Riding Hood as well as the Big Bad Wolf. So, it is important, but once you realize that we have patellas, horses have patellas, we've got 7 cervical vertebrae, horses have 7, as do giraffes, believe it or not, and even dolphins
Right.
Yeah, so it's just saying, it's just like some things are longer and some things are shorter depending upon the species. But now if you get into invertebrates, that's a whole other ball of wax. There are so many different orders and genuses and body plans that it's crazy. You have amoebas, you have octopi, you got insects, you got nudibranchs. It's wild. It'd take about probably 5 anatomy courses to any one vertebrate course as far as teaching anatomy if you go to invertebrates. So.
Wow, that's so. And you would think it would be the other way around because there's so many like moving parts in vertebrates, but
there are. But if you say you're going to do Mr. Octopus creature, well, there is a world of differences between, say, the anatomy of an octopus and the anatomy of a seagull. There's, other than they both have nervous systems and ganglia and brains and eyes, that's kind of about, all they really have in common on the surface, of course.
Okay.
I don't know.
Adrian, can I ask also a question for Terryl about that?
Absolutely.
Sure.
That question of the amount of information that you can throw out is always so fascinating because you have such a deep well of that. For a lot of young students, they ask me this kind of question too. It seems it's really intimidating. Just trying to learn all this other stuff. Like I got to learn human anatomy, then I got to learn all this animal biology and the research of like the environments or how just things work. How do you even just tackle something like that as a student where it's just so much information?
I guess for any student that really wants to go into, say, creature design, and they always do need to bear in mind that there are more jobs in creature design doing actual animals than there are doing crazy animals that you can make up and put on your refrigerator. And the most important thing, if you want to be a creature designer, absolutely, is you must love and treasure real animals. If you're into and really interested in animals, the rest of that stuff should come naturally because you're already interested and curious about it.
Yeah.
If you're just treating animals or as a means to an end, you're not gonna make it because you don't have the passion and the joy. So people love to draw people because they love people. If you want to be a good creature designer, I hope you love animals. I mean, we've got all these wonderful creatures here on our planet.
That's such really good advice. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interject. I just want to raise the glass to that because that's such good advice just in general for art. Like to just pursue the things that make you really, really happy because like it shows like that kind of passion, that kind of love really showcases, like you can see it. You can see when someone loves animals. You can see when someone loves, looking at people, or, when someone like loves an environment. You could just see it. It'll drive you. Sorry, I didn't want to.
You're cool.
No, it's real.
No, I'm just like, yeah, passion.
All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to some questions in our Q&A section. So let me go ahead and take a look through here. All right, I got a question from Dees Lees. He says, hello, I was wondering what strategies you use when you're stuck or get artist block.
I actually got this. I actually got this question last night in a live stream, and I suggested, sometimes it helps to do studies and just kind of take a break from like trying to design a thing. There's all this sort of work that you have to do as a designer, not just with like muscle memory, but also like, putting stuff together and considering lighting and anatomy and all these things. And sometimes it's good to just do the muscle memory first and start with a study. So draw an animal or paint a landscape or something from photo reference is a really great way to break that. And also having, alternate hobbies that kind of scratch the same creative itch, but isn't like the thing you're trying to do. Like I draw for a living and sometimes I want to be creative, but I don't really want to draw, or I feel sort of stuck. It happens a lot. So I actually do this thing sometimes where I prime and I repaint dinosaur toys.
Yeah.
I'll just like prime it up with a painter and then I'll just paint on it, and it's really fun. And I get to have a cool looking dinosaur toy at the end, and then it kind of does the same sort of thing. So, you know, taking breaks and doing studies and doing other creative endeavors can really kind of help with that. And, you know, yeah, that's my advice, I guess.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's perfect. I was gonna say something very similar as well. Like for me, I like to do studies. Damn, no, that's what she said. Like I have nothing new to add. That's perfect. Like because I'm the same way. Like I always like to have like my little victories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, little my little ego strokers when I'm just like, oh man, I'm not doing this the way that I wish I would. I draw, you know, things that are comfortable to me, like a portrait, or like I do like a study. Learning always like really just gets like, you know, like really gets my gears going. Like
Yeah.
like even if it's just like one of those things where I'm just like, okay, well, maybe I should get a refresher on anatomy, or maybe I should get a refresher on this, and then I just start to kind of learn. It really helps a lot. And also, yeah, have different things that are creative, or also allow yourself to have room for you know, hobbies as well, and a life as well.
Yeah.
I think like
yeah.
I think like
What is
for
that?
yeah, right.
I've never heard of it.
No, but like spending time with like
Where do you
friends
buy?
and loved ones, and
But I
you know,
think what's important about that is that
Yeah.
students have to discern. They don't have to feel guilty.
yeah.
I'm gonna do this.
Right.
Yeah, like you.
That's good.
And it took forever, at least me personally, it also took forever for me to not feel like when I
Yeah.
was a student, I was like, if I'm not drawing all the time,
Yeah.
I'm screwing up. And that is like,
Yeah.
because you need,
That's
whenever
okay.
you're like working and whenever you're painting, you need to be able to like do so with intent and focus. And it's impossible to do that if you're coming to it drained. So like you really need to make time for like other, you know, just life and other things to kind of replenish you.
Yeah, one of the things I do is make sure I one of the many things, because it's over 21 years, it seems to happen every 6 months, but is I'll go back to my inspirations, you know, or things that I'll go back and look at comic books I love, or N.C. Wyeth books, or you know, and literally if I have to do a day of work where I'm gonna make this whole, today's going to be N.C. Wyeth day, you know, at work, because I'm going to try, and because I love the way he did those clouds or whatever, then that's how I get through a day of work. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
That's good. That's good advice.
I get outside and I ride. That's what I do. I ride. I have I do a horse that's a dressage prospect, so I'm working with her. And I have then my gelding, which is my dependable schoolmaster gelding, who's very forgiving, happily. And so going out in nature and being with horses, that energizes me so very, very much. Then I come back and my whole frame of mind, I mean, I've gotten good exercise. I've actually been communing with an alien being, a couple of them. I'm learning things at the same time, how to be a better writer. And then to come back to the drawing board, you take that with you, and it's just this wonderful refresher. It just is. That's what I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, being outside is good. I go camping too, or hiking.
That sounds good.
Oh,
I know. Not now, but
it's funny because
I want to go camping now.
I know it's funny because I was working really hard for like 2 months. Like I had like a crazy crunch, and I'm just like, okay, as soon as this is done, I'm gonna go camping. I'm gonna go do things, and then boom, the West Coast is on fire.
It's the worst. It's the worst.
So I'm just like, ah.
Yeah.
Right. I got another question. This is from Joe Flanders. It's a question for Brynn, but I think that this would actually apply to any of the panelists. Joe Flanders asks, Brynn, your crazy hog creature there, he's referring to on the screen, already has a great underlying anatomy with skin folds and fat deposits. Is there any trick to knowing where to put those on a creature, how they fall, their weight, or is it simply exhaustive study from real life sources and burning it into your brain?
The second one, actually. So looking at a lot of animals, I watch a lot of nature documentaries while I work, also, because I feel like it's just constant inspiration, and you really get to see how an animal moves and lies down and hunts and climbs and does all these things, and you can kind of notice how their body, like, you know, squishes and stretches and all this kind of stuff. And so it's a bit of obsessive watching. I'm always that weirdo at like the beach or in like a park or something who's like, you know, there's people everywhere, but I'm looking at all the dogs, like, oh my God, look at it. It's laying down. Pause. Look how they're like the chubby folds on the butt. Oh my God, I can't. And I'm just like, like enamored with it. So obsessive observation is really important. And, you know, and drawing those in. And I think, like, you know, kind of piggybacking off of what everybody says. And I know that everybody here has, you know, great advice for this too, but, you know, really taking note of those anatomical studies. There's a lot of books and stuff you can get that'll show you the inside. And then on top of that, you can kind of put all those fun wrinkles and fat and weighty bits that make it great. So
it makes me laugh because, like, I hear that and I'm like, I do the same, but I look at people. Oh my God, that person, like, I have an awful conversation with the first time date. Oh my God, look at them. I'm so nasty.
See, I feel like I will meet a person, and if they have a dog, I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't right now. Your dog has folds that I need to look at. So
I'm just looking at dog folds all day. No, but I feel you because I'm actually the same. If I go to a party and there is an animal, I will ignore humans for like at least most of that party because I'm like, let's hang out. Hey, Pupper, please love me.
But yeah, that's how I approach it. And
like,
I'm
I don't
sure
need
everybody.
I don't need people's approval, but I need animals' approval. Like, if an animal that's like, I don't know if I'm okay with you, I'm just like, I take that so personally. But I'm just also like, yeah, I get it. But love me.
Now we got a couple of questions here, and I'm going to kind of combine them in the same. Jessica Lee and Gary Gerrafts, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, Gary, I'm sorry. They both kind of ask, you know, are there any book recommendations for creature design or reference resources, you know, that a beginning artist, you know, would be able to use?
Terryl's book.
Yeah, Terryl's book.
Buy her book.
I would say that especially if you're on a limited budget, we all should have this book on our shelves. It's that good old tried and true Atlas of Animal Anatomy for Artists by Ellenberger, Dietrich, and Baum. Always have that. That's a wonderful survey of mammalian anatomy. Those drawings are these beautiful graphite drawings that were done around 1901, and they're just gorgioso. I would say also recommend Elliot Goldfinger's book, he has two. One deals with human anatomy and the other one concentrates on mammalian anatomy, and he goes beyond the Goldfinger that he includes more mammals. He has he's taken the drawings in the Ellenberger book and made them a little bit more diagrammatic, maybe a little bit clearer to understand. And then he's added really neat animals like giraffe and elephants and rhinoceroses and such like that. It's harder when you look for references that deal with reptiles and fish and amphibians. Birds to a certain extent. The best sources for those would be zoology textbooks and comparative anatomy textbooks, ornithology textbooks. I've tried to distill a lot of that in my own books on the subject. And but I'm just saying, if you're on a budget, the sources that I mentioned would probably get those definitely.
Okay. Now, I take it that these books are still in print. Like they're not out of print, or would be difficult.
Those two books, they're always in print.
Okay.
Definitely. And the first one in particular is very inexpensive. It's published by Dover, but you can get it on Amazon, as you can with Goldfinger's book. So I would recommend those.
Okay. And who was the author of the previous book that you mentioned, the first one that you mentioned? What was the author's name?
I just call it the Ellenberger book, but it's Ellenberger Ellenberger, and then Dietrich Drittich, and the last one is Baum, Baum.
Thank you.
Those are the three authors. But you should be able to find it readily on Amazon.
Okay.
Definitely, cool. Those would be good.
I'll need to add those to my library. That's why I was wanting to make sure I wanted to take notes on that.
If you would want to get into anatomy from a layman's point of view, where it's still graspable, there is W. Frank Calderon has a book called Animal Painting and Anatomy, I believe, but the author is W. Frank Calderon, Calderon, and it's profusely illustrated, and it goes into great detail about all of the origins and insertions of the muscles and the different parts of the bones, things like that. And I have my own copy, which is very tattered and dog-eared by now, and I actually, as a young person, copied all of the drawings and then keyed all in colored pencil. This is what I did with my time when I was like a teenager.
That book was well loved.
It's well loved, and it's still in print. It's
exactly.
still.
Now, Natalie, I had a question for you, for myself. You know, I was looking over your work online, and there's a lot of like motion, you know, in your drawings. I mean, they're wonderful, you know.
Thank you.
How do you go about like capturing that motion? Like, you know, because I think a lot of people, including myself, we have a difficult time trying to capture motion with animals, because it's hard enough drawing just an animal just standing there, making sure all 4 feet are, you know, on the same plane and what have you. You know, how do you go about like capturing that motion? What do you study or, you know, observe?
It's always a difficult thing, I think, because for me it just feels like what feels right, and it's a lot of just like studying angles and shapes in animals, and I think that's what I mostly go on. When I was young, I used to always read the books about animals that had a lot of information, just like general trivia of what they did, how they lived, what they were. And then growing up, I used to love Discovery Channel back when they, you know, actually taught us things and had educational.
Not naked people all the time.
Yeah, you know. But I was always just like, if you wanted me to just stop being a brat or do whatever, just sit me in front of a documentary about animals, and like my full attention would always be on those. So I think it's just the years of watching animals move and picking up on the general force that they seem to have. There's always something about animals where they're just, even in a like a stasis position, have such energy in the way they like have form and shape, and I always find them much more interesting than humans. But, not to call out Karla.
Oh, call me out. Okay. Well, humans are animals, so
they are. Yeah, we are.
So that's different.
A different breed.
You know, that's interesting. You know, that's an interesting way, and I don't think it's mentioned enough, you know, to kind of break down, you know, how, you know, animals can be, you know, created in terms of, you know, trying to draw them, you know, in terms of shape and form. A lot of people just think, oh, I got to make sure I put this muscle here. I got to make sure this is in place. But a lot of times, if you like do a silhouette of a piece, you can instantly see like, I can put this shape here, put an oval here, boom, you know, that type. Yeah.
Yeah. I just put a lot of faith in my audience that they know what the hell I'm talking about.
All right, now I got a question for Roberto and Kay.
Oh.
Trying to make sure everybody gets in this gumbo. All right. Now, you guys have a lot of personality to your creatures. You know, they're very whimsical and obviously fantastic, you know, in terms of the settings and so forth. How do you marry that? And also they have, like, you know, the characteristics, you know, especially in the faces of, like, you know, people, you know, like when Kay draws a bunny that smiles or a cat that smiles, it's actually a cat that's smiling. You know what I'm saying? Like everything kind of, you know, twist how like a smile would be on a cat, you know? And same thing with Roberto. How you guys kind of start that process from it looking like the creature that you want, but still putting those little touches of like human features to it as well?
I'm gonna echo what Terrell's been saying. It really comes down to, you know, the knowledge, right? Like you do start from reality. And then once you have a good grasp of that, you could distort it much easier. You know, it's still a challenge, of course.
Yeah, sure.
you know, once you know so much about something, then, you know, you have a better grasp of like how much you can pull and twist and keeping it still like believable.
Is the concept of the new color. Like if I ask you to imagine a new color that you've never seen before and it's not a mix of any other color that you know, you can't do it. It's impossible. So you have to use the stuff that you already have in your brain. You know, you have to use your memory. You have to use the things that you remember, and you just twist them a little bit. So I really like weird things. So making stuff a little bit human, but not that right, makes me happy. So I like to imagine. I find it way easier to imagine creatures and weird things than to imagine humans. And I deal with humans every day. I don't know why. I can see a person very well in my mind, but creatures I can. Yeah. And it's more like I'm trying to get the feeling, try to get the emotion, try to feel the emotion while you're drawing. I think that's the best way to make something that doesn't look human but seem to have emotions and human emotions.
Okay. Like when you're drawing, do you tend to like use like a mirror just to, you know, look at yourself in the mirror to capture certain expressions or whatever?
Yeah, sometimes, sure.
Sometimes I like to think about like people in my life, like my funny aunt who's like super loud, and then I have like this character that's super, you know. So I'll think about my aunt, and then I'll like, you know, it'll just seep in to what you're doing.
I think transference is a big part of art that a lot of people kind of underestimate. Like sometimes, well, actually a lot of the time, you have to feel that feeling, you know, in order to make your mind and your hand feel a certain way to get that onto, you know, the tablet or the paper or canvas or what have you. You know,
it's all connected, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And not only like emotional feelings, but like textures as well. At least for me, I like to imagine that I'm touching everything that I'm painting. Which is very weird because I like to paint some disgusting stuff. So sometimes it feels a little bit weird.
Are you ever just like,
yeah, so there's some stuff that I don't want to put my hand on, just go there in my mind. You go like, okay, how does that feel?
Showers after each session, huh?
All right, just taking another look through the Q&A here. I know
Roberto, thank you for making my boy look really pretty.
I'm just messing around with it.
I like it.
Yeah, he's such a cute boy.
Oh, this is such a good page. Such a good page.
Are they gifting each other? Oh, so cute.
It's an anniversary.
She's gonna eat him later, but for now,
Yeah.
great.
But the love.
The love is so strong for now. Later, not so much. Or
No.
maybe.
Just so strong. So strong, I gotta eat you.
Look at this guy over here. He's just like, son, no. Could have found a better match.
But according to this logic, then he's adopted.
It's true.
Because otherwise he would be headless. It's like, don't make the mistake that I didn't.
Don't make that. Get out. Get out. You don't know what's coming
And
to
you can grow up to be like me and have your own G.I. Joe
Head.
collection.
See, you went really nice. I went, have your own head.
Heads are overrated. Overrated.
I just want you to have what I never did.
Yeah, this right here. This is the original trap.
His head looks tasty.
Oh, I love him, especially with barbecue sauce.
The romance.
Mantises are messed up.
They are. They're great.
Imagine, like, they give in Valentine's gifts, instead of giving like cologne, they give you just sauce.
Mm.
Give you like pasta sauce.
Here's
so
some
you're like,
ranch.
oh.
Yeah.
Just mirror of her body.
I love the idea of it almost looks like lipstick here. It's like just to address, it's sort of like to redress the fact these killer teeth.
So
Lady in red.
And I love it that it's like, wait, are they married?
I kept trying to draw eyelashes on yours, Karla, but I can't.
Oh, hon,
Wow.
here, let's clam it up.
Oh yeah, it has lovely eyes. I was gonna say
There
the
you go.
mascara is
Lamb.
really working for that.
Lamb.
Yeah, maybe it's Maybelline.
It's a clown.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Maybe it's a trap.
I was like,
Yeah,
that's so sultry.
Then we just changed the mouse trap to a wedding ring, and
Oh,
that's so negative.
it's a wrap.
All right, looks like I got time for one more question, so I'm going to combine two into one. From Vivi Hall and Rosanna Run, they are both asking about creature design portfolios as far as like students looking to build one. What are some of the common mistakes that an educator might find in a creature design portfolio, and what should they concentrate on, in doing a portfolio as well?
I'd say not showing enough process of the research. They tend to only show their final result, and they don't really back up how they got to that result through the amount of investment, time, energy, focus, which everything we're talking about with the passion of things, it should be shown. Everyone always relies upon the technique of something to save it, but the technique can only take you so far. It's more about who you are as a person, how you think, how you research, you look at the world, and really show that in your work, which can give us a lot of insight towards, how do you fit within the team then? How do you research? How do you work?
Yeah, for me, what would the it sort of depends. You have to kind of tailor your portfolio specifically to where you're looking to get hired. I mean, for film, again, I'd always place it on. There's sort of two things they'll always ask you in a film. Like, they'll always say, I never want to see, it's something no one's ever seen before. That's like every single time you get hired. And then of course you'll show them that, and then they'll art direct you into something that's been seen a million times. But then, for I think film and stuff, I think, I'd always recommend trying to use these characters in a story, if they're characters, show them in the story.
Got you.
I think also showing how things work, like breaking it apart and showing how things might move, like opening a mouth or extending an arm, or if you have to explain something, that's always been really useful in my experience. And what I typically do in the jobs that I've had is sort of I'll do the design, or maybe I'll be put on a design that's already been worked on, and they usually ask like, can you turn this around, and how does it work, and how does it open up, and what's inside of it, and break it apart. What are the very tiny bits of the eyeball look like, and if the paw were to raise up and you see the underside of it, what would that look like? And so I think like a bit of, again, kind of piggybacking off of what Peter said too, is like process, like showing those exploratory sketches, a finished concept, and then things where you sort of break it apart. It's a good way to kind of be like, I can think and deliver a creature that works.
I think that's really important. Absolutely. So I underline what Brynn was saying. I think also a big mistake is for people who want to be creature designers to only have their portfolio full of imaginary creatures, because so much creature design is of real animals. I mean, you got to be able to do elephants if you want to work on the next Jungle Book in Africa Part 5. You need to know, or Lion King Part whatever it is. And I mean, think about it. Count on the fingers of one hand how many heavily imaginary creature-based productions, both on TV and on the big screen, are done versus productions that have everyday real animals in the world productions. I mean, my last feature that I worked on the big screen was Call of the Wild, and that's totally dogs.
Yeah.
And I was hired by Lucasfilm back in the olden days because I could do real animals, and I knew their anatomy. My first big film was Jumanji. And so I see lots of student portfolios, but they can draw lots of imaginary creatures, but when they try to draw a real animal, it falls apart. And that's my worry and my concern. And that gets me back to, if you want to be a creature designer, please love and appreciate the wonderful animals we have around us. It's so very, very important, both because for the animals for their own sake, but also on the practical part of making a living. I mean, I do everything from obviously fantasy stuff. A lot of my bread and butter comes from wildlife illustration, paleontological reconstruction, and everything in between. So it's so very, very important. It's like having it's like if you want to do human-based characters but don't have any humans in your portfolio, it's kind of like, or you only have imaginary vehicles without saying, well, here's my new version of the latest Ford Mustang. I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Don't leave that part out because it's so important.
Oh man, that's wonderful. And I think that might be a wonderful place to end right there. That concludes this episode of Sidebar Forever, hosted by Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson. You can find us online at sidebarforever.com. Any emails or questions can be directed to us at sidebarforever@gmail.com. And also, subscribe to us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Sidebar Forever is copyright 2020. Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson.